I want to talk about different stages of relationships and having realistic expectations in relationships. That's because it's my belief that many of us have unrealistic expectations of what a relationship should or even can offer. There's a lot of pressure on the couple relationship to provide most of our needs. For example, our partner is expected to be our best friend that we can talk to about everything, our lover that we are sexually attracted to and have great sex with, a companion that enjoys doing the things that we want to do, and our greatest supporter that champions everything we do. He or she is expected to meet all of our needs, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. But really, we're only human. Who can do all this? I'm not sure any of us can fulfill all of these roles for our partner. And then when we come up short, which of course we will, doubt creeps in, and at worst, pressure to be somebody that we're not, to please our partner, who of course will never be pleased because these are unrealistic expectations. So I'm hoping that by giving you some of the trends of longer-term relationships, you will recognise that there are typical patterns that happen in relationships, and it's just about navigating your way through them as best you can. Before I get into it, there's one more thing that I want to encourage you to do, which is to get some of your needs met elsewhere. Obviously, if you're in a monogamous relationship, the only place to get your sexual needs met is with your partner or through masturbation. However, other needs can be met elsewhere. So for example, your needs for emotional connection can be filled with close friends. It's important not to put the full burden of your emotional needs on your partner because it might overwhelm them. Find support in other areas of your life, such as friends and family. And if you don't have that, then you can find support in counselling. Similarly, with needs for mental stimulation, you can turn to an interest group, friends, study, and other forums, but don't rely completely on your partner, who might find it exhausting to keep you mentally stimulated. In regards to spiritual needs, you might find a religious group, surfing, bushwalking, meditation groups, yoga, or other ways to connect with other people spiritually. It's not about replacing your partner, it's about avoiding the pressure of relying too heavily on him or her. Instead of doing that, recognise that you're part of a community and connect into it so that your relationship doesn't become a kind of island that can't support all of its needs. Okay, so now let's talk about 4 stages that relationships typically pass through, which Dr. Susan Campbell defined as the romance stage, power struggle, stability, and commitment stages. So we'll start with the romance stage, which is the very beginning of a relationship. You know, when two people feel those in-love feelings, and usually at this point, we see each other through rose-coloured glasses. We're hopeful that our partner will be able to meet our needs for love and belonging, and we look for evidence to confirm that indeed they will. And because of that, what we tend to do is overlook the differences that exist, because those differences might threaten our desire for connectedness. And at this point in time, we do tend to see differences in a negative light. In this stage, chemicals are also at play, and they help us to feel love and romance. So for example, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin increase pleasure and excitement and infatuation. And because of that, there might be some fantasy associated with the other person, especially when you look to the future and imagine how a life with this person might fulfill your hopes and dreams. These in-love feelings, or what has been termed limerence, last about 6 months to 2 years, although there's individual differences. So for example, I've seen couples where it lasts as short as 2 to 3 weeks. They could be couples who've had experience in other relationships, so they know about heartbreak and difficulties. And then there are couples where it can last as long as 3 years. The next stage is called the power struggle stage. So by this time, unfortunately, those chemicals have started to wear off, and couples are becoming more aware of their differences. And that's quite scary because differences are seen as threatening. And if couples don't have solid conflict resolution skills like the ones that I've taught you today, they might dig their heels in and stand their ground, which is very detrimental to the relationship, because what it does is it puts you on opposite teams. So then both of you are pulling in opposite directions, like a tug of war, which leads to doubts about whether this person is the right person for you. So all those little charming things that drew you to them in the first place become irritating. And if you don't learn how to put into practice the skills you've learnt today, it will either end in divorce or you will stay together but feel very lonely. To cope with this, you might know some couples who live parallel lives. So one person might, for example, throw themselves into work, whilst the other person throws themselves into child rearing. And still other couples become bitter about marriage and decide, oh, it must be fundamentally flawed. In fact, unfortunately, what's flawed here is people's view of marriage. We expect our partner to meet too many of our needs. And when we're confronted by their limitations, we're tempted to ignore our own and point the finger at them, saying he or she must not be the right person for us. When individuals are able to stop for a second and reflect on themselves instead of doing that, and learn the skills to navigate their way through the power and conflict stage, then it gives them the opportunity to progress to the next stage, which is the stability stage. Here, couples have learnt not just to face reality, but to embrace it by recognising their partner's not perfect, and in fact neither are they, but that doesn't make their relationship a disaster. If they can let go of their fantasies about relationships and grieve the loss of what they thought it would be like, and instead embrace the reality of what they actually have, not in a bitter way or a resigned way, but in a truly accepting way, then they will be on their way to finding true intimacy. Here you start to accept each other's differences and see them as okay. You stop trying to change each other and develop a mutual respect. Of course, this takes time and it is an emotional journey. However, if you're unable to do this, you will most likely either move back to the power and struggle stage or decide to divorce. The next stage is commitment. So by now, you understand who you are, who your partner is, and who you are as a couple as well. And you love each other, knowing full well many aspects of both yourself and your partner, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You give each other space to be individuals, but also make time for your relationship. You recognise that you could in fact live without each other, but you choose to be together. It doesn't sound as romantic, does it, as that Hollywood ideal that I can't live if living is without you. But in practice, it's much more romantic because your feet are firmly planted on the ground and you're making choices to be with your partner and to love him or her rather than being compelled by transient emotions and leaning on each other in dysfunctional ways. In this stage, you are a team, balancing your needs as individuals with the needs of the relationship. It does take a lot of work to get to this stage, and it's not a linear process either. You kind of will move backwards and forwards through the different stages, depending on what's happening in your life at different times.